Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
It's brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions, and we're pre-taping the Thursday before our Monday air date, and we're going to try to do an assessment of what's going on in the media, and
Or what isn't going on in the media.
and step back and see if we can make some sense of it. We're actually taping on the day that the current September Democratic debate is going to be taking place, but I don't want to get into the weeds of the 10 candidates that are going to be on the stage and the 8 other candidates that didn't make it because of the criteria. Right. The bottom line is the key things they're probably going to be hashing out is gun safety and why Mitch McConnell hasn't put any bills up, and Donald Trump and his lack of national security, lack of State Department, lack of anything. So which of all this craziness do you think is going to have legs?
I mean, also today, the other Democrats are dealing with the possible moves to impeach the president. They're at least talking about it today as we tape, and we don't know, of course, what the upshot's going to be.
What does impeachment get us, though? It doesn't remove him from office.
I don't even want to go down with what does impeachment get us. If I would make that discussion, the discussion is what does the Constitution require? Never mind what will it get us. Because if we get into this back and forth, like Nancy Pelosi says, I'm not taking anything that the Senate's not going to approve, etc. That's not what the Constitution says. If the guy commits high crimes and misdemeanors, you impeach him. Now, it's up to the Senate to decide is he guilty or not guilty. To prejudge what that decision is going to be, I find that just totally not even worth the salt of whatever piece of bread they want to put that on.
But I mean, the whole procedure, I think, just takes so much time, and it puts focus where you don't want to put it, right on the president, and energizing his backers to push back. So that's my problem with going forward with any kind of impeachment procedure routine. I understand your point. That's exactly what the Constitution put is there for. That's what the procedure is there for. But I don't want to give this president of ours any more focus than where he has already.
I know, but if he were impeached, that would really wreck his ego.
I'm
wondering if he would resign, take his ball and go home.
Never mind his ego. Here's the thing. Whatever they want to call it, because I think this was a procedural move that the Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, was doing about, we'll put these steps in place so we can move forward on it. But they've been doing procedural stuff, doing whatever they're doing for the last 5 months, so that's neither here nor there. For me, the way, which is I think what we discussed about starting to look at, was how the media handles covering this president per se. So they fall into the trap of what's he tweeting about now, what's the current tweet storm, whatever. But this whole impeachment issue, really, you don't really need the Senate to convince the American people about the cause is just or not. If the press did its job and start itemizing how many different things that this guy has done, not in this is today's tweet, he's breaking the emoluments clause by having Air Force planes stop at one of his resort areas and overnight stuff that they normally wouldn't be doing, but is putting money in his pocket. Not another tweet about whatever the other brush fires that he wants to distract you from, but within a concerted effort of, oh, wait, this is against a violation of this particular part of the Constitution. So there's another investigation that's launched. This is against this, and if you start to just itemize strategically in context, what do we used to call it? Contextualization and perspective is how you put a news story in the proper perspective.
Right.
If they would start to report like that as opposed to individually, in the totality, there's strategic and there's tactical. Tactical is you follow the tweet. Strategic is what is this
What's it
tweet
mean?
a part of? Is it a longer picture? Is it a wider picture? That is my take of why we're having a problem, because if we as journalists don't put this stuff in perspective, not, oh, he just tweeted this, oh, he just did that. He said, oh, but wait, if we go back to January 2018 when he did this, that was in violation, and then he did this, and then and you write that kind of a story. I think the American people would get a much better sense of what's transpiring in this country.
And I mean,
No, I agree 100%. But doing it the way you just described is like following a breadcrumb trail, but picking up each individual breadcrumb and not examining where the trail actually goes, which is what I think you're saying. The media is not following the thread.
I mean,
Go about.
No, I mean, you're making a good point, but let's just take a quick example. Some FEMA executives leaders were just indicted by the federal government for basically pocketing and extorting money that was intended for Puerto Rico relief from the hurricane from a couple of years ago. And so that in itself is a story, but then the context, Trump said 2 years ago that the government of Puerto Rico were thieves and charlatans and couldn't be trusted. And so the context is here's the president appointing these thieves and calling the Puerto Ricans thieves.
The thieves, right.
And in that context, you see it becomes a much greater story, and it just shows you how
If you tie that story that just broke about these guys to the earlier story from last year about how this power company that had never built two transformers
had never put two wires
together managed to get this giant contract
Right.
just because of some other FEMA connection.
Yes.
You understand that this is the big story, big picture that needs to be reported in that way. Not just today, some more FEMA guys just got busted for
Right.
so-and-so.
Right.
And so, but see, this is endemic of this administration. I remember we were having a conversation. I think you and I were having this conversation. I was having this conversation. Somebody said, Trump drained the swamp, and he drained it right into the White House. Okay? And I said, that's an apt phrase.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
And I would have quoted you too.
This man says, I'm going to drain the swamp, folks. And
Yes,
guess what?
yes.
He drained it right into the White
Absolutely.
House. A bigger cesspool in the White House than he was supposedly railing against.
Right. Whatever rock he lifted, the little crawlies from under that rock crawled right into the White House. I mean, it's
just
impressive.
It's just unbelievable. So to get back to the kinds of stories that are breaking in the news, like what was that there was a story that broke about what you call him's resignation, John Bolton's resignation.
Yes.
John
The
Bolton's resignation
security
is
advisor.
a perfect right.
Yeah.
The perfect example of what do we say, forest for the trees or weeds from whatever the other analogy is. The point of the matter is everybody is in the media talking about, well, did John Bolton resign or did Donald Trump fire him?
Who cares whether he resigned or he got fired?
But it makes
It does make sense, and there is but they're busy
there's a
playing this scorecard thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I keep reading. Well, it depends on whose account you'd like to take, and they're spending more time talking about whose account you'd like to take.
What's the bigger story?
The
Yeah.
biggest story, as we all know, because we were talking about this earlier, is the larger picture is you got what Bolton titled National Security, right?
Advisor, right.
You got no DNI. Dan Coates been gone since whomever, whatever. Okay, so
Secretary
here are
of
two
Defense?
key intelligence
Yeah.
persons that don't exist. Okay. The biggest story is not only those two key things. You don't have a Secretary of Defense. Okay, you don't. Let me just shortcut it. This man has more vacancies in his goddamn administration than if you take the last 5 administrations put together. Then that's how bad he is.
But
So
you know what the funny thing is? he doesn't listen to him anyway. So even if he filled the post,
That's true, but you know what? If you had somebody there
Yeah.
when there's an internal crisis, they could do some things
Yeah.
to at least stymie from steamrolling to something bigger that
Yeah.
he might mess up even worse. And so having nobody there
Yeah.
is worse than having a sycophant there, because the sycophant will at least say, this is what's happening.
Maybe.
You need to know about it.
I-
Now, whether he listens
Maybe.
to the sycophant
Yeah.
like he doesn't listen to the career people,
Go ahead.
You know, I read a quote this morning from Scaramucci. He said, we are all just background filler. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah,
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
He said,
But I get you.
everybody is there. They're just the supporting cast. They're just there to be seen. There's one spotlight. It is on the guy with the orange hair, and everybody else is in the shadows. And no one else has a say, as we know. I mean, so he doesn't care. He wants people that aren't going to alert him to anything. He wants people that are just going to do what he says. Bolton got fired or resigned because he was trying to do his job.
yeah, not that we like the way Bolton was
Well,
advising
maybe
him,
maybe we didn't, but he was trying to do his
yeah,
job.
no, I'm not even going to dispute that. But you raise an interesting point that I think we were talking about earlier. The fact that Scaramucci says one spotlight, one person. Last Sunday's Times had a piece by the chief critic of the New York Times. I could pull it up and call the guy's name out. We should give credit where credit's
Oh,
due. But
well,
basically, he was saying is basically, real Donald Trump isn't really a president. He's a guy in a reality TV show playing the president in the White House. And the thrust of the article, which I didn't even get a chance to finish, the headline just caught my eye. If you need to understand this guy, you need to understand that he's just a television character playing a role. And
he's the star.
that problem for us as a country is very detrimental, but it's not just us as a country, folks. It's detrimental for the entire globe. And so, however long we have to suffer this, hark back to how it might be detrimental to the globe. The other story, besides Bolton resigning, that actually Bolton's resignation took off the front burner, is a high-profile spy that
Did they
the
pull?
CIA had to pull. And so there was this hemming and hawing. Did they pull him because they were worried that Donald Trump's loose lips were going to sink that ship and cost this guy his life? That seems to be the thrust of it, to the point where a cartoon even showed up in a Moscow newspaper with the mole into the White House floor saying, "You burnt me." I went, "Ooh, even the Soviets."
That's
Even
good.
the Soviets.
I didn't see that
I
cartoon.
saw-
That's pretty good.
Somebody put it up on their screen last night, and I caught it. I almost fell off the couch laughing. But here's the point. This guy, the long arc story, is that could have been very much a part of why the CIA pulled him, because this guy has been loose with information from the day he stepped in office. He was giving secrets about Israeli cooperation to the Soviet ambassador in the White House. He wasn't even in office a week. And so that's been the threat. He's been Vladimir Putin's pal since forever.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what does Putin have over him? We don't know.
Yeah, that speculation is.
There's a lot of speculation.
But I mean, he was trying to give his own family a high security clearance until other people started pushing back. I mean, his own son-in-law, I guess. And I can see the scenario where the CIA would have just pulled out their hair and said, "We just got to do this," rather than wait before he gets captured, and then it's a big problem.
Yeah. And we don't know, folks, whether, because the story, one of the best reactions to this story I saw, Susan Rice was on Lawrence O'Donnell a couple of nights ago, and he was trying to get to the bottom of it. Hey, did they pull him because of Trump and blah, 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 and we know that maybe there was a thought of bringing him out in 2016, and you were national security advisor, blah, blah, blah. Could you tell us a little bit? He said, Lawrence, I cannot comment on anything classified, and it's not appropriate. Wouldn't have been appropriate then, it's not appropriate now. that was the best answer
Yeah.
of anybody that's ever been in a national security position, in any position where you had to deal with classified information. The journalists ask you a point blank question, you go, yeah, I know something about that, but guess what? I ain't telling you because that ain't the smart or safe thing to do.
I caught a piece of that, and I was impressed by that answer, just like you were, because at least it was direct, and it was basically saying, well, I basically can't tell you.
She said, that's your job to ask me that question. My job to tell you no, you're going to get an answer from me for that question. And so, but guess what? He asked Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, yeah, we did that. That would have been the Donald Trump answer. Just so he could look big and important, which was why I'm sure he did what he did to the Russian ambassador. He said, I got this secret I'm going to share with you. He can look big and important.
Well, that's what it's all about for him. You know.
But you see, here's the point. This fool doesn't have to puff himself up and look big because he's the president of the United States of America. But because he's playing the role, he is not the president.
Right.
He doesn't understand the significance or the importance of the job that the Russians gave him. And I'm telling you, the Russians gave him the job. I don't care what anybody wants to say. Oh, the interference didn't count. Yeah, right. The guy's an illegal president.
A bunch of people not voting also. No.
Yes, I mean, that's how the Russians helped that whole disinformation campaign. I mean, I'm not even sure they didn't get into some ballots and rig the machines, because there were a whole report came out that they attacked all 50 states at some point.
Well, I mean, from a tech side, let me just talk about it from a technical point of view. Some of those machines run on old versions of Windows. That's the software that's under the voting software. They were just built with that.
Okay.
And even Microsoft doesn't fill all the security holes in some of those versions anymore. So, technically it was
quite easy.
Relatively easy.
Well,
I mean, this
it would have been.
But, listen, they've got, we send kids to college to become doctors and lawyers. They send kids to college to become hackers. Seriously. I mean, they've got schools set up for this. Big competitions.
Yeah, I mean, cyber attacks. That's the
future of warfare.
Yeah. We talked about this story, I think, on the last Media Watch, I believe, or on one Media Watch back. We were talking about the fact that a Soviet general had made this big announcement. I think it was one of those dinners that even Michael Flynn or Jill Stein or all them people might have been at the same dinner and whatever, or maybe it was some other function. But they had the tape of the guy saying, "We've got the secret weapon, and we don't have to worry about the bombs and whatever. With the new secret weapon, which we will be launching or whatever." And lo and behold, the secret weapon was the disinformation cyber attack. That's what the defense general. So now that story broke way back when, and I saw it on somebody's cable or whatever, but I've never seen a follow-up to. You understand that the fact that this president is saying, no, it wasn't Russia, or no, I don't want to put Russia on sanctions, and that I want to invite this guy into the G8, make it G8 again, where the rest of the world says he's anathema because he messed with Brexit, he messed with our elections, he messed with whatever, and we don't want him anywhere near us. But he's saying, oh, he's our buddy, he'd be much better to have him in there, right? Even though he definitely messed with our elections and put this orange Julius monster in our White House. So yeah, that's why. But Mitch McConnell, to get back to Moscow Mitch, will not give out any money to the states so they can maybe harden their systems against this attack.
And here again, that's a story that doesn't get covered enough.
Not enough.
But then again, the Washington press corps just doesn't want to. They'll cover the tweets, like you said. They'll make sure their editors are happy for the day, and that seems to be the primary focus of a lot of these reporters, because I don't know how good the Washington press corps is today as compared to, say, 2 decades ago.
Yeah, and Eric and I were talking about this. I'm under the belief that it's what's endemic in what I see in our society today, that the younger people coming up, the children of my generation, my children, they just don't care that much anymore. Because they were pampered, they were always told that they were excellent, that everything they did was perfect. So they think whatever they do is perfect. He's sitting over there laughing. I know he doesn't buy this. I do.
No, that's just part of
that's
the
part of
problem
it.
with our
That's
society,
just
but I
part of
wouldn't
it.
even put that in there amongst the top 20%, for real.
don't
I
know.
beg to
I
differ.
don't have as
I
much
hear where you're
faith
coming from. And the reason
as
why I
you
say
do.
that is because my kids are almost baby boomer children.
Yeah, but
And
your kids were brought up
I understand, but see, if my kids
in a
are
different
there,
way.
I'm sure there are other kids out there who understand the severity and the significance of
Sure.
what it is to live in a democracy and how to fight for it. I mean, I just don't want to paint them all. I agree with you. There are too many people, the way you just described,
Exactly.
sitting out there. There are
Way
too many.
too many
There are
of
too
them.
many. But
And in the
there is
service
just-
industry, you run into them all the time.
there's just so much more at stake,
there is.
at play.
But-
Like, my other thing is just how significant the dumbing down of the educational system,
it's very
the public
significant. I
educational
think it's very
system
significant.
across the country, for real, just because people didn't want to pass budgets to fund schools. People wanted to make sure that a lot of this electorate wasn't that well-schooled and well-educated. They want to dumb it down so they have robots just punching buttons, doing what they're told. You understand?
Yeah.
That's all part of it. But within the context of fighting for the democracy and trying to protect it, there are people who know better, who should know better, to get back to Moscow Mitch. Because when you have documented evidence from all your intelligence community saying the Russians launched the attack, the Russians are coming back, and you get bills that are passed that's designed to shore up your infrastructure and make sure that doesn't happen. And the guy in charge of the Senate will not bring those bills to the table so they can vote that money out there. That's willingly knowing that you're doing the country a disservice. So when he got accused of being in Putin's pocket and got the nickname Moscow Mitch, he was totally calling it McCarthyism, etc. No, it wasn't. McCarthy was dealing in bogus facts.
Right.
Yes.
We're dealing in true facts, not fake news, as your Orange Julius might say. We know you're sitting on that bill. We know you could pass that bill and make things better in this country. Why are you not doing it? Nancy Pelosi, did you see that thing of Pelosi getting upset with the reporter?
No.
Not the election stuff. The reporter was talking about, to her, why didn't you bring the House back early to deal with the gun legislation, blah, blah. He said, I'm sick and tired of this stupid question. We did what we were supposed to do. We passed our stuff back in February. Go talk to Mitch McConnell. Why don't you go ask him, is he regretful of all the lives that have been lost since we sent him that legislation that he has now brought to the table for a vote? And she's right.
Yeah,
She was
absolutely.
pissed, and she should have been pissed. They did their job. Mitch McConnell is the guy, Moscow Mitch.
Yes.
I'm calling you out, Moscow Mitch.
Well, I mean, with the election, with not passing the legislation to harden up the election machines is just an obscenity. Because the NSA can basically tell you not just where the information came from, they could probably trace your keystrokes. They can probably tell you which keys you were pressing and which coffee shop
That's a
you did
fact.
it from. So, I mean,
That's a fact.
there's no question about they have the data on where the attacks were coming from. If anyone can trace it, they can, and they hire hackers.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue. I don't know what the delay is for his brain, other than it's not on the platform.
Well, you're assuming that he doesn't recognize this. I think he does, and is just not acting on it.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, you think, for
what
some
I mean.
reason he
Yeah.
thinks it's going to help elect more Republicans or something. I don't
It's
know.
probably putting
How
more
much time?
money
We
in
got
his
about a minute.
it's probably putting more money in his pocket somehow.
Right.
We got
You
about
know.
a minute.
We got about 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. So to get back to what the job of good journalists should be, or what we as professionals need to do to put this stuff in perspective. We got how many candidates in the Democratic Party now? Too many.
I don't know.
But,
Too
but,
many.
but the issue is electability. Can they beat Donald Trump?
Right.
Are they going? They're issue oriented that their issues are too far left that they're going to turn off the middle voters that supposedly elected most of the Democrats in 2018. Were you guys looking for out of? Well, I mean, what's your take basically on two things: Nancy Pelosi dragging her feet on impeachment, and the Democrats trying to figure out what their game plan is. Take whichever one you want to start
I mean,
with.
I'll just deal with the game plan.
Okay.
I'm just worried about what's going to happen at this debate and beyond, because the Democrats do such a good job of imploding
Yes.
and shooting each other up at these debates, and they're just arming the Republicans with stuff they can use later on, and voice snippets out of Democrats' mouths. So that's what I'm worried about.
Okay. All right. And of course, the coverage of these debates and how it's covered, whether it's the horse race thing or the background deep.
Yeah, it'll be the horse race.
Okay. All right.
Just judging from how I see journalists handling. I mean, you can.
And which one you want to tackle?
Well, I agree with Bob. We constantly shoot ourselves in the foot, and I'm hoping that we can. There are 10 candidates that are appearing tonight. I don't know how many candidates there are at large now. I've lost track after like 3. But everybody's talking about something different. There's no cohesiveness within the party at all that I can see.
They want to
which
say
scares
that
the hell
one
out
thing
of
that
me.
separates them from the
From
rest.
everybody else. Yeah, so I want to prove that I'm better than this guy. I want to prove
Yeah.
that I'm better than her. Prove that I'm better than him. When are we going to get together and say, hey, look, there's a collective goal here. Let's focus on that. And that's not, I don't see that happening right now. A couple of issues, that everybody's agreeing on, but there's no cohesive platform that I'm seeing.
Okay, well,
and we have about a minute.
One of the things that I think they haven't sorted, and that's because they're all in the fray trying to be the nominee, but the party as a whole, for me, needs to figure out where they are in their war, because with the Republicans you're at war, but they need to understand you're always at war, and in a war
But
you have to
they're
have
too busy
strategic.
trying to be a general.
No, you got to have strategic
Right.
planning, and you have to have tactical planning.
Right.
And part of their problem is, I'm not sure somebody's out there in charge saying, this is our strategic goal, and this is the tactical objective for now, in order to be able to achieve the strategic goal. And the tactical is, how do we get through this primary season and let people know what the issues are without savaging each other and without making ourselves alienated to the rest of the country?
15 seconds.
That's the tactical. And strategic is, if we can do that, then strategically we can win and defeat Donald Trump, so we can put our stuff in place. That's where I think we are. And since we're out of time, this has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
We'll catch you the next time, and on
On YouTube and Twitter at Media Watch EVT.